Sabrina Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
All right. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And you can catch me here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Quick shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. And let's go ahead and get into it, guys. I want to give shout outs really quick to people in the chat. We have a lot of stories to talk about tonight because it has been an interesting week in news. What's going on? Lawrence, who's a Sabby member, says, no Khanna. We're going to get into that. Shout out to Nightbot. I don't know what that means, but welcome. What's going on? Cool Blue 71 says, real clear politics reports poll result for Pennsylvania U.S. Senate. Oz 48% versus Fetterman 45%. Wow. Okay, so that's different than the poll that I saw this morning. Margin +3. It was a one-day poll on October 26th, the day following the debate. That is interesting. Very interesting. Shout out to Hannah, says Sabby with a smile. Greetings, SG. Hey, JN, let us off too soon. JN, let us off too. Oh, I mean, JB. Okay, that makes sense. Shout out to Dabby Dabs. What's going on, Sabby fam? Don't forget to give the like button some love. That's right. Go ahead and do it. Hit that like button, guys. And if you're new, hit the subscribe button. What's going on, Saul? Hi, Sabby. Love to see more people crashing the fake left town halls. Gray Zone is doing the really hard work internationally. RBN covers all things that matter at home. Love. Thank you so much for that, Saul. And RBN covers foreign policy too. Cobra, what's going on? 20 minutes for my dose of Sabby. No, I'm here now, Cobra. I'm here now. What's going on, Street Team Tony? Hey, everybody. Had a quick question. All right. Oh, do any of you know the name of the MSNBC anchor who is white or Jewish and wears glasses and is always getting owned on Rising the Hill? That could be Rachel. Wait, Rachel Maddow, does she wear glasses sometimes? I think it might be Rachel Maddow. Shout out to, wow, lots of comments. We're just getting started. Shout out to Monarch says, Sabby Sabs, Dabby Dabs, maybe Mabs, Mabby Mabs, maybe. What's going on? Refalo, Dims suck. Couldn't said it better myself. Could not have said it better. What's going on? Ben, who's a Sabby member, says, hey, y'all see that debate? What a disaster. We're going to get there, Ben. We're going to get there. What's going on? Angela says, hello, awesome people. Who's removing Aaron and Max? People are afraid of them. I bet it's people who are afraid of them. Yeah, we'll get into that story. I do feel like it's like every week there's a censorship story. I'm not kidding. Shout out to Joe Kwan Woo. Giving a shout out there to Roman Smith and says Houdini. I don't know what that's about, but welcome. What's going on? Nadia says, is the gray zone gone? They're not gone, but they were removed from something. So we'll get to that story. Shout out to Delthea for this comment here. Delthea is also a Sabby member. Hello, all you beautiful people. What's going on, Noman? Gray Zone were disinvited to some conference event. Try to keep up. I see Noman. Noman, you must be on Twitter. What's going on? Notori says, rock on. Shout out to, it's so many comments. I'm trying to make sure I don't skip. Shout out to CBC Voter says, happy Thursday, Sabby Sabs. What's going on, Peggy? Good evening, everyone. Happy Thursday. Shout out to See the Change. Hey, Sabby and fellow comrades. Great to see you all. Stoked for the show as usual. Shout out to Sean Miller says, yeah. I hope I said that right. What's going on, Carrie says, we need free healthcare like the fire department now. I agree. Shout out to Mother Rat says, what up, Sabs? That sounds like the name of a heavy metal band. Mother Rat. New album from Mother Rat. Shout out to Mark Hill. Get you a Rumble channel. I am on Rumble. You can find the link to my channel. It should be in the details tab of all my videos. Shout out to Jenna. Says, hi from Pennsylvania. Well, we're going to be talking about your state tonight, Jenna. We're going to be talking about your state. What's going on, Jamie? Says, Republicans and Democrats are just playing good cop, bad cop. I agree. Fed Up says, what up, Sabby? What up, Fed Up? Shout out to Bill says, and polls always underestimate the GOP support. I have noticed that. Just remember Trump and Hillary, right? Shout out to Bullhorn Bulletin with Zeneb says, howdy all. Hello, what is going on? Shout out to Good Dog says, hi from Britain. Well, we've got a lot to talk about. I do want to go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. If you are interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and of course, the ultimate. All of their names are listed here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Really appreciate the support, guys. You guys are rock stars. And I want to give a shout out to a new Sabby patron. We call them newbies. Let's give it up for John Tunka. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you guys so much. Okie doke. Uh-oh, I don't know what I did there. I just signed myself out of something. Hold on, guys. Oh, no. I think I accidentally clicked the X button there, Corey, on Type VNC. I don't know how to get back to the... Okay, I'll let Corey handle that. Okay, what are we talking about tonight? Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Going to the thumbnail. I'm still on that band name for Mother Rat. That actually sounds pretty badass. Tonight, we are discussing Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate removed. So yes, it is another censorship story, different event, but that has happened. I found out about that late yesterday afternoon. We're also going to discuss John Fetterman and Dr. Oz debate. God, that was a cringe debate. We are going to break that down tonight. And I'm also going to discuss Khanna speaks out, and he seems to be the only one that is willing to speak out right now at this point. And last but not least, we're going to cover question 1. So if you live in Massachusetts, this story is for you. It is important about one of the questions that is on the ballot for this November. And I think if you really care about how your tax dollars are going to be allocated, if you really care about having a wealth tax, you definitely want to tune in for that story. There's 4 questions that are on it, but we're going to focus on question number 1 for tonight. So each night I'll get into the other questions. Cools. All right, so let's go ahead and get into our first story here, which is question 1. Now, for those who are not aware, Massachusetts is a ballot initiative state. There are 24 of them, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. And we've passed a lot here with ballot initiatives. We legalized marijuana that way. So ballot initiatives here in this state, they've gone a long ways. Now, it doesn't always pass. Ranked choice voting was on the ballot in 2020, did not pass, unfortunately. Most people just didn't understand the question. So that was a big part of it. But This year, question 1. Let's get into it. So this is question 1 that's on the ballot in Massachusetts. Now, this is a proposed amendment to the Constitution. I'm actually going to make this just a little bit larger so you guys can see what this says, because I think this is important. Additional tax on income over $1 million. Do you approve? Something's happening there. Okay. Do you approve of the adoption of an amendment to the Constitution summarized below, which was approved by the General Court in joint sessions of the two houses June 12th, 2019, and again, June 9th, 2021. So this is being revisited. So let's go ahead and get into the summary of this. And we're going to break this down. This proposed constitutional amendment would establish an additional 4% state income tax on that portion of annual taxable income in excess of $1 million. So they are trying to add an additional 4% tax on people who make at least $1 million annually or more. So this is not something that is supposed to affect people who make less than $1 million. So just keep that in mind. This income level will be adjusted annually by the same method used for federal income tax brackets to reflect increases in the cost of living. Revenues from this tax would be used subject to appropriation by the state legislature for public education, public colleges, and universities, and for the repair and maintenance of roads, bridges, and public transportation. So I can go ahead and tell you where I stand on this. I'm 100% for this. First and foremost, I worked in the education system here in Massachusetts. We do need more funding there, especially for these schools that are state schools that are in low income neighborhoods. They don't get as much, tax revenue to fund those schools. So this would help. The other issue here is public transportation and roads and bridges. And if you live here in Eastern Massachusetts, and maybe some parts of Western Massachusetts too, I don't know about you, but I'm tired of dodging potholes. I'm tired of dodging potholes on bridges, which I have to do. If you drive on the Tobin Bridge, which is a popular bridge here in Massachusetts and the eastern part, there are potholes on that bridge. So imagine dodging potholes, and you're on a bridge, and it's a problem. It's a big problem. Public transportation. Yes, we do have public transportation here in Eastern Massachusetts, but it is not like the public transportation system that you will see in New York City. Number one, it's not 24 hours. I think last call, if I remember, last call was 1 a.m. I think for the subway, and maybe 1:15 for buses. It's been a while because I haven't taken public transportation since the pandemic started. But the public transportation here that we have in Eastern Massachusetts, it is not easily accessible depending on where you live. There are places that should have a subway stop. We call it the T here, that should have a T stop that does not have a T stop. So if you live in those communities, you have to have a car, right? Just to get to work. So that is something that has been a problem since the day I moved here, which was 11 years ago. They have not improved the public transportation system. It's also not reliable. If you're trying to get to work on time and you have to make a transfer, forget it. Forget it. And I've always had to make a transfer. No matter which school I worked at, I either had to switch a train or go from a bus to a train. So it's just not reliable. And that's part of the reason why more people will drive instead of relying on public transportation. Now, I will add this for those who are not aware. Part of that is the fault of the administration that was here before Governor Baker. They actually let the public transportation system fall apart. They were not using the funds like they were supposed to make those adjustments to that system. So that's part of the reason why we are where we are right now with public transit here. But the other problem is that also you're supposed to perform maintenance on these trains every 5 years. And that administration wasn't doing that either. That's why the trains are falling apart. That's why they're really old. And that's why it's just not easily accessible. So I'm 100% for this. Now, I do want to point something out here. If you saw my panel on ballot initiatives, I did explain to you that there are cons with ballot initiatives. And I think it's important that we do mention those cons. Here's one of the cons: subject to appropriation by the state legislature. So the idea is that the money would go towards these items mentioned here that we just discussed, but the state legislature still has to approve it. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, I think if it passed, I think they will, but I still need to tell you that. We got to put it all out there. Now, what will your vote do? A yes vote would amend the state constitution to impose an additional 4% tax on that portion of incomes over $1 million to be used, subject again to appropriation by the state legislature on education and transportation. A no vote would make no change in the state constitution relative to income tax. Now, this piece is important for me to mention as well. We need to talk about the consequences. So if I scroll down here, in favor, by voting yes on question 1, you will make sure that the very richest in Massachusetts, those who make over $1 million a year, pay their fair share. Current tax rules allow multimillionaires to pay a smaller share in taxes than the rest of us. So you see, guys, this is not just an issue nationally, it's a problem locally as well, where millionaires are getting by and they're not paying their fair share of taxes. Let's go on. Question 1, the millionaire's tax, will make the extremely wealthy pay an additional 4% on the portion of their yearly income by income above 1 million. The additional money is constitutionally guaranteed to go towards transportation and public education. Question 1 means that every child can go to a great school. We can fix our roads, expand access to vocational training, and make public colleges more affordable. Excellent roads and schools help our businesses, small businesses grow, create new jobs, and create strong communities. Question 1 means creating opportunity for everyone. So this piece here that every child can go to a great school, this is our way around property taxes. And one of the things that I've vented about a lot on the show is that property taxes or school funding should not be based on property taxes, because people who live in low income neighborhoods, they're going to have under-resourced schools. People that live in wealthy neighborhoods are going to have schools that have a lot of resources. That's how it works. This is a way to get around that. Now, I still think the federal government should be funding public education in this country, but this is a step in the right direction. Now, I have to tell you about both sides. Voting against it. Now, this is why some people may say no. Question 1 nearly doubles the state income tax rate on tens of thousands of small business owners, large employers, and retirees. To that, I say, if you're making over $1 million a year, you'll be all right. Question 1 treats one-time earnings, the sale of homes, investments, businesses, pensions, and inheritance as income. Again, who receives this? Like, when we talk about inheritance, working class people usually aren't receiving an inheritance. That's usually going to people that are coming from like wealthy families. If we want to talk about pensions, how many of you get a pension? I never got a pension. I never qualified for a pension. And then also they talk about home investments. Let me point this out. The sale of home investments. Again, like this is something, the sale of homes and investments. This usually is going to apply to people that have money. This is the problem. Okay. So they're pointing this out, but I'm like, this applies to people who usually have the money. It says this would suddenly force many residents into new, very high tax bracket, depleting the nest eggs of small business owners and longtime homeowners whose retirement depends on their investments. People making over $1 million a year will be okay. Sorry, they'll be fine. They get no sympathy from me, bud. Record inflation. Of course, they would put this in here. Supply chain difficulties and continuing pandemic issues make now the worst possible time for massive tax increases, especially when Massachusetts already has a giant budget surplus. It's never the right time, though. Remember, this is being revisited. This has already been presented before years ago. So it's never the right time. Anytime you try to talk about implementing some type of change or what some people may call radical change, there's always these people come forward and say, now's not the right time. Well, when is the right time? And here's the other piece here. There is absolutely no guarantee revenue from this huge tax hike would actually increase spending on education and transportation. Politicians are giving themselves a blank check with no accountability. But that's the same thing with ballot initiatives in general. Again, it has to be approved by the state legislature. So there's no guarantee with any of them. When we legalized marijuana here in Massachusetts, again, that was on the ballot. So that was a ballot initiative. There was no guarantee for that either. The state legislature still could have come in and say, maybe not so much. So that is the chance and the risk that you do take with a ballot initiative. But I think there's more to it, and I do want to share this as well. I wanted to show a video, but unfortunately, every video on this particular subject is copyrighted. All of them. Because all of the local news channels here are licensed. So I can't show those videos. But Tufts University actually has a breakdown as well. And you guys can follow this for those of you who lives in Massachusetts, because it's not just this question, but it's called the Voter's Guide to 2022 Massachusetts Ballot Questions. And you'll see here, if you scroll down, here are all the questions this November on the ballot. Question 1, which is the one we just talked about, a millionaire's tax. Question 2 is new rules for dental insurance. Question 3 is alcohol sales at chain stores. And then question 4, driving license for unauthorized immigrants. So we're going to break down all of these on the show, just not tonight. I'm doing one question a night. I think it'd be easier that way. But there's something here that I wanted to show you as well involving the millionaire tax. So like I said, they have a whole guide to it here if you do want to read the entire piece. This is the part that I wanted to highlight, though, when we talk about who will pay. I don't know why they this is just a Tufts thing, but there we go. I was trying to get that last sentence. Okay, it doesn't want to highlight that last sentence, but I'll just make it bigger for you guys. Oh, when I make it bigger, it goes away. Okay, there we go. Okay, this piece right here, who would pay? While very few households in Massachusetts earn over $1 million in any given year, they account for a substantial share of total income in the state. So this piece right here, in 2019, the last year for which we have completed data, there were 21,000 state taxpayers with incomes of more than 1 million, amounting to just 0.6% of all households. Yet, those households earn 22% of all taxable income in Massachusetts. The further you go up the income ladder, the starker this imbalance. Combining state and federal data, we estimate that Massachusetts had around 2,000 households earning above 5 million in 2019. But those 0.606 blah blah blah, those 0.06% of taxpayers garnered 11% of all income. So this is important to note. Like I said, Tufts goes a little bit deeper because they did the data. But they also said here, racial inequities among big earners are trickier to pin down, as publicly available tax data doesn't generally capture details about race or ethnicity. But separate surveys should suggest that non-Hispanic whites comprise nearly 90% of all $1 million deal, blah, blah, blah. Geez, of all $1 million earners in Massachusetts. So this wasn't something that I needed to research. I know that like there aren't a lot of African Americans in Massachusetts, so I really didn't need to research something like that. But that's huge. 90%. So this is question one, yet, ladies and gentlemen. So for those of you who are showing up to vote in November, again, like if you're not wanting to vote for a politician, that's totally fine. But I still think you should show up to vote for these ballot questions. That's very key. And some people just do that. Some people show up, they don't vote for any politician. They just vote for question 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's right, Terry. Governor Baker is a millionaire. Exactly. He might vote against this. He might vote against it. I'll be voting for it. Make them pay more. And I don't feel bad about it. I'm gonna go to some of the comments here, and then Corey, if there's any comments on Rockfin, just let me know. Thank you for the super chat, Mark Hill. Pin Senate dead brain or Pin Senate dead brain, or I think you meant carpetbagger globalist. Wow. Lauren said should be way more than 4%. It should. This is modest, I feel, but I think this is kind of a way to get this passed this time around, because last time it didn't work out so well. Delthea says the Blair bill, which was before Congress in 1870s, would have federalized public education. So there you go. Could have had this done. Could have had that done. And then everyone would have a fair education in this country. But those are just things that we need to change, that we got to change. Okay, I'm going to go to a couple more comments here. JB says, I should do the same thing on my channel. Go over the ballot initiatives in Florida. Great idea, Sabs. Yes. Those of you watching, if you have a channel and you're in a BI state, go over the ballot questions for your state, so people can see what's on the ballot. And I said this before, like some of these ballot initiative questions, they are worded in such a way to confuse the voter. And if you're confused, a lot of times you end up voting against it. Like we've passed good things here. We passed the right to repair law, which I felt was huge in 2020. We didn't pass ranked choice voting. Well, that one broke my heart. But again, the question was confusing to people who were not politically aware. People like me, I understood the question. Past, legalization of marijuana. There was another one on there for 2020. I forget, but yeah, this is something you should do. And for those of you that live in states that are not ballot initiative states, the idea is that once these policies pass in a BI state, is that it will actually spread to its neighboring states. So when we legalize marijuana, that spread. You got Connecticut, New Hampshire had to be the oddball. They lost by 1 vote in the state Senate. That was just really weird to me. But you have Connecticut, you have Vermont, Maine, I think New York too now. I have to double check the New York one. But at that point in time, I think we were the only state on the East Coast that had legalized it. Not decriminalized it. It was already decriminalized, but had legalized it. So there it is. There it is. Okay. We're going to move on to our next story. Let's do it. Ro Khanna. I will say this. There are things about Ro Khanna that I obviously do not like. But one thing I will say about Ro Khanna, is he seems to be the only one that's willing to go on to mainstream media and left independent media to own up to what they have done. And by they, I mean the so-called progressives in the House. He's the only one. I don't see any of these squad members or any of these other progressives answering this question about why they chose to retract that letter. So Case Study QB clipped this. Thank you so much, Case. Thanks, Case. It says, Khanna discusses the retracted House progressive letter on Ukraine and why he still supports it. And by supports it, the letter that was retracted. So he's still standing by supporting that letter. And I just think it's very interesting. I want to say something really quick before I play this clip. Pramila Jayapal was the one, it was announced that she was the one that pulled it. Her name was the one that was mentioned. It's like, oh yeah, we decided to pull this back. And I think that's because she's the chair, but also, I mean, let's be real. So if your name is on it, on the retraction, you should have been the first person entertaining media outlets to explain why you did what you did. But no, Pramila wants to run and hide. And all the other progressives too. Let's get into it.
California Congressman Khanna is one of the Democrats who signed that letter and is still backing it. Congressman, what in the world happened here?
Let me tell you my position. I have voted for every package to arm Ukraine. I will continue to vote to arm Ukraine.
Well, at least he's honest. See, this is the thing. No one else is saying this. No one else is answering this question. Ayanna Pressley, AOC, Jamal Bowman, they've all been confronted at town hall meetings asking them why they chose to fund Ukraine with more and more, weapons, billions and billions of dollars. And they won't answer that question. Instead, they are mocking the protesters and saying that they're being rude and disruptive. But it wouldn't have even gotten to that point if they would have just answered the question. And they're not answering the question. And you have someone like AOC who was just on Pod Save America. How can you not even mention it? How can you pretend like it's not an issue? So when you vote for something the way that you do, you should be brave enough and bold enough to respond to your constituents and explain to them why you voted the way that you did. Khanna, I don't agree with him by choosing to continue to vote for funding to Ukraine, but at least he's willing to say it. That's the difference.
What happened with this? Signed the letter, didn't sign the letter? It was a staffer. How does this happen?
I don't think the staff was to blame. I think the letter is common sense. We're going to stand with Ukraine, but at the same time, we're going to have diplomacy to try to end the war. You know who tweeted out that just today? Ambassador McFaul, who is one of the strongest advocates for standing with Ukraine. People need to look at the history. When we armed the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, did President Reagan stop talking to the Russians? Absolutely not. One of the reasons we got the withdrawal of the Russians is we continued to negotiate. When we had the height of the Cold War, did our senior military stop talking to the Russian military? Absolutely not. These people on Twitter, have they spoken to General Dunford? Because I have. Have they spoken to Admiral Mullen? Have they spoken to the senior military leaders? They have no idea what they're talking about.
But let's go back here just a little bit, because there was something he said here that kind of like throws Pramila Jayapal under the bus. One of the things that she mentioned was that a staffer submitted the letter without the letter being vetted, which really didn't make any sense because they said they drafted this letter back in June or July. They couldn't get that month down. It was going back and forth. And they signed the letter. But what was interesting that someone pointed out on Twitter, and I thought about that, they mentioned the fact that if the letter was written back in June and July, then why are there events described in that letter that happened in September? Which means that they went back to edit the letter at some point and still signed the letter. Listen to what he says here, though, about the staff.
strongest advocates for standing with Ukraine. You know, people need to look at the history. When we armed the Mujahideen in Afghanistan,
Sorry, I think it's this part.
common sense, we're going to stand with Ukraine, but at the same time, we're going to have diplomacy to try to end the war. You know who
Oh, sorry. I didn't think I went back far enough. Okay, here we
armed
go.
Ukraine?
But what happened with this?
Well,
Signed the letter, didn't sign the letter? It was a staffer. How does this happen?
I don't think the staff was to blame. I think the
Khanna said, I don't think the staff is to blame. You know what that says to Pramila Jayapal, who threw the staff member under the bus? Look, I don't know what you guys got going on here, but this is Khanna saying, you are not going to implicate me with this message. I'm going to come forward and I'm going to let everybody know I am not blaming the staff. That's Khanna. Khanna's letting the staffer know, look, it wasn't me. No. Pramila, you on your own with this one. I didn't say anything about the staff. We should not be blaming the staff. So this is Khanna's way of getting himself out of this controversy. This is his way of him pulling himself out of it and saving himself.
letter is common sense. We're going to stand with Ukraine, but at the same time, we're going to have diplomacy to try to end the war. You know who tweeted out that just today? Ambassador McFaul, who is one of the strongest advocates for standing with Ukraine. You know, people need to look at the history. When we armed the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, did President Reagan stop talking to the Russians? Absolutely not. One of the reasons we got the withdrawal of the Russians is we continued to negotiate. When we had the height of the Cold War, did our senior military stop talking to the Russian military? Absolutely not. These people on Twitter, have they spoken to General Dunford? Because I have. Have they spoken to Admiral Mullen? Have they spoken to the senior military leaders? They have no idea what they're talking about.
When would any of us have the opportunity to speak with those officials, though? When would most people, this is an interesting question, when would most people have that opportunity to speak with those officials?
On the Armed Services Committee, I don't want us to have a nuclear war, and I trust the president's judgment.
Congressman, I'm not arguing.
So this is the part that's weird. He says he doesn't want us to have a nuclear war, but then he follows up with that. He should have just stopped there. Then he follows up with that with, I trust the president's judgment. The same president that told us we're headed towards Armageddon. That's the problem. He should have stopped right after he said, I don't want us to have a nuclear war.
Any of those points. What I'm asking is, you got 2 weeks to go before the midterms. Do Democrats need these kind of messy, unforced errors right now? Republicans, love them or hate them, even those who privately despise Donald Trump, when they need to get in line and fight Democrats, they all get in line behind him. Do Democrats need to have their eye on the ball right now?
Let me tell you something with the problem with what she just said. He ended that conversation with nuclear war. I don't want us to have a nuclear war. Instead of her either agreeing or disagreeing with that, which most people should agree with that, she jumps into, let's talk about the midterms. If there is a nuclear war and we're all dead, the midterms don't matter. How do you just gloss over that? I just say, yeah, let's talk about the midterms. Do Democrats need to have these kind of mistakes right now? Did you not just hear the words nuclear war? This is where a lot of people's priorities are right now, though. A lot of people who only focus on electoral politics, this is where their priorities are. Let's talk about what's going to happen in the midterms. Oh, yeah, Joe Biden said there may be Armageddon, there may be a nuclear war. Okay, yeah, who are you going to vote for, Fetterman or Oz? This is how easily distracted a lot of people can be. It's terrible.
Well, look, the letter that I signed was in July. Do I think that it should have been released now? No. But you know who made an issue of it is all of those folks on Twitter. What they should have done is to have the judgment of people like Ambassador McFaul, who would have said, of course we need to stand with Ukraine. Is there any person in that letter who's saying we're going to stop the funding? No. That's
Who are all the people on Twitter Ro Khanna is referring to? What does he mean, all those people on Twitter? Who? You know, because I do want to point out, it wasn't just leftists that had a problem what happened here with that retraction of that letter. Even liberals were complaining about it. So everybody is pissed. So it's just, then he goes into the part about the funding. Now he's like, well, you know, the letter didn't say we would stop funding them. And that's really interesting, Ro Khanna, because that is a piece that a lot of people are frustrated about. So you can just openly come out and say, well, we're going to still, you know, fund them. So it shouldn't have been retracted. Telling us over and over again that you have the money, that the US government has the money. So if you can openly come out and say, we're going to fund them, but you can't openly come out and say, we're going to fund the American people and give everybody health care, that's a problem. Where was this same type of drive and passion for Medicare for all? Where was it? All this money that you say that you don't have, the government doesn't have, yet billions and billions of dollars are going out the door. The money is there. The money has always been there. The money just isn't intended for us. It's for everyone else but us. That's the problem. So I hope people pay close attention to this rhetoric that he's saying here.
Kevin McCarthy's position. But are you telling me that the Democrats shouldn't be for force and diplomacy? We're a party of responsibility. And by the way, I have talked to senior leaders at the White House. I have said the president has one of the best judgments on this. And my guess is that the president himself would agree that we need to have this kind of diplomacy. So
I haven't heard Joe Biden say that. In fact, in the most recent interview that Joe Biden had, that's not what Joe Biden was saying. They're not even on the same page.
Let's talk about the next 2 weeks. What do Democrats need to focus on? It's go time.
The economy.
See again, see how her attention is diverted? Just like that. Yeah, we need to talk about, he brought it back to the issue with Ukraine and the funding and diplomacy. And she goes, okay, let's go back to the midterms.
Economy. Look, we're winning on reproductive rights as a human right. Oz made a terrible gaffe today that's going to cost them. We're winning on voting rights. But we've got to win the economy, and we've got such a simple case to make. We're bringing manufacturing home. We're actually helping the working class. They're running on Trussonomics.
I have to interrupt something he said here. Let me rewind it back just a bit, because he's incorrect here.
Is that the president himself would agree that we need to have this kind of diplomacy.
So let's talk about the next 2 weeks. What do Democrats need to focus on? It's go time.
The economy. Look, we're winning on reproductive rights as a human right. Oz made a terrible gaffe today that's going to cost them. We're winning on voting rights. But we've got to win the economy, and we've got such a simple case to make.
Is the Democratic Party winning on abortion rights? Because the polls that I have seen show that abortion is not the number one issue for voters. That includes Democrat voters. That is not the number one issue. And so how are you winning on that if that's not even the number one issue? The number one issue is the economy. So, and I've said this before and I go back to it. I do not believe, and I've talked to people, I do not believe that the overturn of Roe v. Wade is going to make people come out and influx the way that they think it is going to help Democrats maintain the House and the Senate. I don't believe that. Because again, it is not the number one issue for most voters. It's the economy.
bringing manufacturing home. We're actually helping the working class. They're running on Trussonomics.
So he goes on to say, we're helping the working class. How? How are you helping the working class? Because this is the thing. When Khanna came on, I had this discussion with him. And I said, working class people and poor people are still struggling financially. So this is where the commentator should push back and say, how are you helping the working class? You haven't given people health care. You cut some of the student loan debt 10 to 20K, but people have to apply for it. And then they came and they retracted some of the rules on that. So now the people who didn't have their loans consolidated, they don't qualify. So there's that. So what have they done to really help the working class? When food is more expensive, gas is still high depending on where you live. What have they done? See, when these politicians come on, you can't just take their words for face value. You have to push back and ask them more. What did you do to help the working class? If that's the case, how come they're not excited about coming out and voting for you?
They're literally running on what bankrupted the British. They're saying that they want tax cuts. They're saying they want to cut Social Security. How are we not winning the economic argument when they're running on exactly what Britain did?
You're not winning the economic battle here because you're not helping the working class. That's why, Khanna, you kind of answered your own question there for yourself, because you're like, well, the Republicans are running on cutting Social Security. How are we not winning the economic battle? How many people are on Social Security? When they talk about, they're running on cutting Medicare. How many people on Medicare? The majority of Americans don't have Social Security. The majority of Americans are not on Medicare. You need to look at the entire group that you have left behind, that you're leaving out. That's why you're not winning on the economy. You're still not paying people a living wage. You had 7 Democrats, 1 independent who caucuses with the Dems. All of them voted no against a $15 minimum wage. And you wonder why you're not winning on the economy? How was that beneficial to working class people, not increasing the federal minimum wage? Someone let me know. It makes 0 sense. 0.
The best point. How are we not winning on the economic argument? You're the ones who have taken us from the depths of the pandemic. Then what is it about messaging and strategy that Republicans seem to win on this when they're not even offering anything?
Because the Democrats aren't offering anything either. They always come back to, what is it with the messaging? Democrats have to tell the story better. You have to frame it in a way. You can frame it in whatever way that you want. But when people look at their bank account, they see what's real. When people go to the grocery store and they see how expensive bread is, how expensive diapers are right now, they know what's real. So your message and your story that you're spreading to people doesn't mean anything, because people can look at their own material conditions and see that you are lying to them. That is why the Republicans could win. That's why. Because the Democrats are the ones who are in charge right now, and the economy is a mess. This is not to mention, she talks about, you pulled people out of this pandemic. Really? Did they? That's why people are still being evicted in mass. That's why you still have tent communities in Boston, Austin, Los Angeles, all across this country. If people have been pulled and they've been pulled up by the Democrat government, that's why the homeless population has increased. Really? People can see it for themselves. Even if you're not living it, all you have to do is take a fucking walk and you can see it.
bluntly, Stephanie, it's the consultant class.
What does that mean?
I'll tell you what. They look at the polling. They say, Democrats, you're up on reproductive rights. You're up on voting rights. Talk about that. Don't talk about the economy. That may be a tough issue for us. Give me a break. I mean, look, I'm for codifying Roe versus Wade as our first vote. Second vote, let's have voting rights. But why not on third, fourth, fifth, sixth vote do the economy? And we need to talk about it and make the choice. You know, one of the things.
There's a problem with what the order that he just made. We're gonna break this down. Listen to the order that he lists these policies in. Listen to the order.
They look at the polling. They say, Democrats, you're up on reproductive rights. You're up on voting rights. Talk about that. Don't talk about the economy. That may be a tough issue for us. Give me a break. I mean, look, I'm for codifying Roe versus Wade as our first vote. Second vote, let's have voting rights. But why not on third, fourth, fifth, sixth vote do the economy?
That right there. He wants to put the economy at the third, fourth, or fifth or sixth vote. When I just told you the number one issue important to Americans right now is the economy. And he wants to put that as like the third vote at best. Let's talk about something. Now, I am 100% pro-choice. But economically, if you cannot afford to have an abortion, you're not going to be able to have a safe abortion. So for people who are working class, people who are poor, if you don't have health care that will cover abortion services, if you don't have the finances to pay for an abortion, if you don't have the health care, abortion is not going to be a number one issue for you. Do you see the problem? People look at their material conditions where they are. What is number one for the Democratic Party may not be a number one issue to the average American. Because what good is having all those other policies passed first if economically you can't contribute, you can't commit? This is the problem. This is something that they're not thinking about. Again, I'm 100% pro-choice. But if you don't have health care, and if you don't have the finances to have a safe abortion, abortion may not be the number one issue for you. Whereas people who are wealthy, they're all set. You see the problem? So some of these wealthy, suburban, liberal, elite, especially the coastal liberals like here in Massachusetts, they may put down abortion as the number one issue. They're probably not even thinking about the economy as an issue because they're all set financially. And wealthy people can get abortions in many places that some of us cannot. And discreetly, they can go to other countries and have a safe one when you can't afford to. So keep that in mind. This is the problem. This is why the Democratic Party, they're done. You get me? They have not learned or figured out how to connect with the basic economic needs for the working class and for those who are poor. That's the problem.
We need to talk about it and make the choice. You know, one of the things that's a problem is the same thing with Russia. We have no sense of nuance anymore in our politics. There's just a sense of you do one thing and you have to stick to that. We can talk about abortion, voting rights, and the economy. And we need to speak with our hearts as opposed to poll tested messages.
All right, then.
Yeah, you can talk about all of those things, but the problem is for Democrats, they're putting the culture war first. That's the problem. They focus on that first and put the economic needs last. This is why someone like Trump was able to come in and win. That's why.
Congressman, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Really good to see you. Great to have you here at 30 Rock.
I'm convinced they want to lose. I really am. I'm convinced sometimes that they just want to lose. Their main goal is just to fundraise. They don't really plan to do anything for you. When I talk to people about the difference between Republican and the Democratic Party, I'll say this. The Democratic Party, I think it's an incredibly abusive relationship if you've been a part of it, if you've been in this relationship. Now, people can say whatever they want to say about me, but I have never voted Republican, and I never told you to vote Republican. I told you to leave the whole two-party system behind, and if you're going to vote, vote independent or third party. If you don't want to vote for a candidate, still show up and vote for those ballot initiatives. I told you to do direct action and mutual aid because that's actually going to help. But what I noticed about the Democratic Party, and I was an Obama voter, so I'm speaking from experience here. It's like, I call it an abusive relationship because, you know, the Democratic Party is like, they'll punch you in the face and then they'll give you flowers. And they think that because they gave you flowers, you should forget that they punched you in the face. You know, it's like, yeah, I know I punched you in the face, but I gave you flowers. That's the Democratic Party. They make a lot of promises to people, especially to African American voters. They make us a lot of promises that they don't fulfill just to continue to get our vote. And they can't win without the African American vote. And I'm talking to African Americans right now because I want to say this. Why do you keep voting for them? Why? They do nothing. We say, well, we need them. We need them for what? What have they done for us? I mean, Joe Biden wrote the crime bill. And it made me want to just scream. Just seeing all this line of old Black people lining up, waiting for 10 hours to vote for Crime Bill Joe. That made me feel some kind of way. It really did. And what has happened? Nothing. The communities haven't improved. The Democratic Party ain't trying to do nothing for Black people. But yet, we're told to come out and vote for them because the Republicans are worse. Here's something I want you to know. They're both worse. They're not going to help. Period. And eventually it will get to the point where the Democratic Party won't need our vote to win. Ah, yes. And you would have voted for them for all those years and didn't get a damn thing. It's abusive. It really is. So my thing to you, and we're going to talk about this tonight on Call In about the whole Dem exit thing. If you're still part of the Democratic Party, especially if you're African American, it is time for you to Dem exit. Leave them alone. Leave them in the wind because you don't owe them your vote. You don't owe them anything anymore. Let it go. Let it go. I'm going to go to some of the comments here. Bill Bradley says we should do federal ballot initiatives. That would really change the game. Because then we would really have a say. That would really change the game, Bill. Thank you so much for saying that. Desert Mantis, unless it's Florida where the legislature voted to overturn the ballot initiative to let the felons vote. The legislature added that crap about paying expenses. Yeah, I talked about that. That is one of the cons of ballot initiative. Depending on which state you live in, the legislature can come in and say, I don't know, we're going to overturn it. Luis, stop arming Ukraine. Rick says, Row neocon. Synthetics. Roe has Raytheon stocks to artificially inflate the value of. So it's interesting because we did mention that on Twitter. By we, I mean RBN. And Khanna actually replied and said, those are my wife's stocks. They do not belong to me. I should see if I could try to find it, you guys. I just see it because I remember like CJ sent it to us and I was like, oh boy. Mario, capitalism is the greatest gaslight in human history. That's right. Gamer says Dems had decades to do these things, but never did. That's true. Thank you for the super chat, Oz. They definitely want to lose, Sabrina. I'm telling you, man, as long as they fundraise, they're all set. They'll still keep their jobs because people keep going back out to vote for them. Thanks for the super chat, Cool Blue. I consider realigning coalitions. The Dems are going for the rich, the elitist. The Republicans will be winning over the workers. For people who pick the two. That's another thing that's happening too, you know? I'm sure some of you, if you're on Twitter, you saw what Cenk Uygur announced the other day, that he'll be supporting the Republican candidate for mayor in LA and not the Democrat candidate. I'm not even going to get into that tonight. I think CJ touched on that earlier. I'm not even going to get into that ridiculousness. Thank you for the super chat, Zeneb. Here in Kentucky, the Republicans are the ones that fiend at helping, then do nothing and say the Dems are worse. Different party, same tactic. There you go. There you go. Now I'm going to check really quick. I just want to make sure I put this over here. You're not muted. Okay, I did that right. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything on there. Okay. Thank you for the super chat, Natalie. It's our job to get serious and quit buying into these selections. General strike now. Well, you know, Natalie, we had a general strike summit on RBN, a 3-day summit, and people told us we were being ridiculous. And look at where we are now. Nothing has changed, right? Thank you for the super sticker, Lana. And thank you for the super chat, Steve. Happy B-Day, Gamer. Happy birthday. I didn't know. Gamer, if it's your birthday, everyone tell Gamer happy birthday. I did not know that. Happy birthday, Gamer. Gamer tried to slide in shy. It's not. What? Everyone's saying, oh, okay, well, happy future birthday. All right. Let's go ahead and get into our next story. So, yes, we are discussing censorship again. Different story, same players. So, recently, I saw this tweet from Aaron and from Max, actually. Both of them tweeted about this, about a conference that they were supposed to attend in Portugal. So this is the first conference that they've attended to discuss these issues. But unfortunately, unlike the conference in Toronto, this conference decided to respond differently. So Aaron Mate Aaron Mate tweeted this. I saw this yesterday. Listen to this. Max Blumenthal and I were invited to Web Summit, a tech media conference in Portugal. They've now canceled us and made clear below that they bowed to pressure from those who oppose our journalism on the Ukraine proxy war. Our detractors can't refute us, so they silence us. I'm going to get to Web Summit in just a second here. He went on to say, when we spoke at Web Summit sister conference in Toronto, we pointed out that if our detractors were intellectually serious, they'd engage in debate. That's what honest people do. But they can't do that. They only adept at smears and censorship. And there's the video there, and I'm going to play that clip in just a second to show you what they said there. Now, here was the announcement from Web Summit. Okay. Here's the announcement from Web Summit. Web Summit has rescinded its invitation to the Gray Zone for Web Summit 2022 in Lisbon. Web Summit has always been a platform for rigorous debate. Okay. We have dedicated stages specifically for robust dialogue and contentious and defining issues of our time. But you canceled their invitation? This is a thread, so here we go. Always, we aim to have a wide spectrum of views represented and to have opinions strongly challenged. I'm not laughing at the situation with the Gray Zone. I'm just laughing at this statement because that's exactly the opposite of what they're doing right now. At this time, we have listened to advice and to the views of our attendees. We are taking action to withdraw the Gray Zone invitation. Isn't this some shit? I'm sorry, guys. It goes on. This is a mess. We understand the reaction of many to the Gray Zone's presence in Lisbon, and we pledge to approach the crucial issues of freedom of expression and platform technologies with greater care. We apologize for the hurt caused. Web Summit stands with Ukraine and its people, and we celebrate the fact that many speakers and attendees from Ukraine will be with us in Lisbon. And, what does that have to do with anything? We have taken various actions in support of Ukraine and its tech community throughout the war of aggression, and we will continue to do more as long as it continues. This is their site here because you can see them on Twitter. So this is them on Twitter if you wanted to follow them. I don't. But I want to show you, this kind of points to something that was said at this Toronto conference that they went to. I covered this a while back, and I'm just going to play this piece here where they actually talk about the fact that people want to smear them, but they don't want to actually have the discussion with them about why they believe they're incorrect. And I've always said this, if you disagree with people, I know some people don't want to talk to people they disagree with. I don't approve of that. I think you should talk to people that you disagree with. So I've always said, if I disagree with someone, I would like to have that discussion with them. The problem is sometimes you'll reach out to those people and they don't want to actually have that discussion. Just ask Nick. Nick knows. Ask Nick from RBN. Nick knows all about this, about reaching out to people and them not really wanting to have that discussion, but they'll smear you. So that's happened to us on RBN a lot. Just saying. But I want to get into this clip here because they talk about people not wanting to have that discussion. And I think with this one, I'm going to have to use volume booster. Because if I remember correctly, I think the mic is a little bit lower. Yeah.
How that came about.
Just recently at the Gray Zone, we obtained some leaks from a British journalist named Paul Mason, who claims to be
about a British journalist.
About a British.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. But these emails came from the emails of Paul Mason. He was sending them, and basically, he was plotting with some colleagues and some contacts inside the British national security state to have us deplatformed. And there's a long conversation about it, and I can't go into details, but basically, nowhere in these exchanges does it occur to them, if we don't agree with the Gray Zone, why don't we just write an article debunking them? They've put out a bunch of reporting. We cover all sorts of topics, Russia, Syria, Ukraine, China. Put out an article refuting us based on facts. That's what intellectually honest people do.
So that part right there, this is something that does not happen. I mean, I can't speak for them per se, but I can tell you for us over at RBN, this does not happen. It doesn't happen. People will smear us instead of actually having the discussion and the conversation. Because the reality is they don't really want to have that discussion with you. They don't want to hear your side of it. They want their narrative to be the only one. And some of these people are ops. Let's just be real. I call it like I see it. Some of these people are ops and some of these people are fed. And I can tell you go onto Twitter and you see some of these handles. This account was created a month ago. They have 1 follower. They have like 2 tweets. They never show their face. You never see their face, right? In the pictures. And it's just like, and they'll all come at you all at once. This is why I don't respond to a lot of shit on Twitter. They'll all come at you at once. And it's always the same accounts. Yeah, bot farms, right? But some of these people are ops and some are fed. I just call it like I see it. So no, some of them, they're not going to want to have that discussion because their job, and this is what I believe, their job is to maintain the status quo. Their job is to control the narrative. And if they engage in that discussion with someone that has a different perspective that is different from the State Department, then they're giving that person somewhat of a platform, and that message could spread to their viewers and their readers. And then their viewers and their readers may start to question the narrative that they've been telling them all along. They don't want that information to get out. Let's go on. There's a little bit more here, and then I want to get to the website.
Emails expose a prominent British journalist working with someone in the UK Foreign Office who is an intelligence officer, Andy Price, to get us removed from all social media platforms and removed from PayPal as other alternative media outlets like Mint Press and Consortium News were, simply because he doesn't like our opinions on the NATO proxy war in Ukraine. That's where we're at right now.
Guys.
Yeah, I think that guy's an op too. I saw that. I saw that exchange. I also think that guy's an op as well. Oh, and by the way, be careful with PayPal because I did see something new that came out about them today. Is that they're coming after people too. It's a mess.
Gray zone basically means standing between black and white. Would you really stand between different sides, or are you basically always taking the counter side? It seems to me like you're, against all mainstream media and just, for everything else.
Well, being against mainstream media is not bad. And then when she says the counter side, who decides what's the counter? The person who controls the narrative, right? Who controls the narrative? Mainstream media. And whose narrative do they follow? The State Department. So you have to follow the path. That's a big part of the problem here. I think that's what she may not understand. It's right for you to be critical and oppose mainstream media. They're controlled. So I don't understand. Like when she said that, that's when I kind of thought like, I don't think she really understands. Because like I said, most people don't watch independent media. Most people watch only mainstream media. All they know is CNN, MSNBC, or Fox News, and maybe local news here and there. But most people that I talk to, they have no idea what a TYT is. They don't know what a breaking point is. And these are channels that have hundreds and thousands of subscribers. TYT has millions of subscribers. Most people that I talk to have never heard of it. That's what people have to realize. And so when I tell you that the narrative's controlled, also keep in mind, even on a lot of these platforms, independent media is suppressed. It didn't used to always be that way, but remember, the algorithm changed. We've been talking about that. So your message is less likely to reach more people than it was before.
We have our political views. I mean, I personally identify with the left, I always have, but the facts are the facts. And journalism was once considered a trade where the facts come first. Mm-hmm. But in this environment where essentially our journalism is controlled by the same people who control our society.
So are you only fact-based, or are you opinionated and do you write commentaries and all that?
We have our opinions, but the facts always come first. Mm-hmm. And what makes us stand out, I think, is that so many of our colleagues, unfortunately, have abandoned that tradition of not putting the facts first. And look, the most hilarious example to me was when for 4 years it was fashionable in the U.S. to believe that the president of the U.S. was a Russian asset and was being compromised with P-tapes and other forms of blackmail. It was transparently ridiculous. It was a scam. But everybody went along with it, not because I think they actually believed it, but because that was the dominant partisan narrative of that time. And we're above that.
Okay, so the dominant partisan narrative at that time. So it's important to understand as well. Look, you don't have to like people's journalism. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to watch them. You don't have to read their work. You don't have to buy their work. You don't have to support their work. But to silence people, to censor them, that's not right. If you don't like it, just don't watch it. If you don't like it, just don't read it. That's what I've always said. But you just remove people from conferences and from platforms. It's so juvenile to me. So this is the summit that they were supposed to attend. It's the Web Summit 2022. It's sold out. They're already asking people to pre-register for 2023. Make this a little bit bigger. And this was going to be held in Lisbon. So listen to this here. We are a company from Dublin, Ireland that holds events across the world. Web Summit in Lisbon, Web Summit Rio and Rio de Janeiro, Collision in Toronto. That was the clip I just showed you. That was the previous conference. And Rise in Hong Kong. Politico has said, we run the world's premier tech conference, The Atlantic. That Web Summit is where the future goes to be born. So you guys see this? And the New York Times, that we assemble a grand conclave of the tech industry's high priest. At a time of great uncertainty for many industries and indeed the world itself, we gather the founders and CEOs of technological companies, fast-growing startups, policymakers, and heads of state to ask simple question, where to next? So that's what this summit is supposed to be about. You'll see there's over 70,000 people attending, over 160 companies, 50.5% women attendees. I'm not sure why they felt the need to put that, but 900 or over 900 speakers. And then we go back here. I wanted to point something out that they mentioned here. 300 plus partners. And here are some of the speakers that are listed for this event. So you have a lot of co-founders and CEOs, but guys, Noam Chomsky was going to come to this event. Well, I guess Noam is still coming. Well, let me knock on wood. Because, and I say this because Chomsky's narrative about Russia, Ukraine, he's not for this either. But so far, I haven't heard them announce that they are removing his invitation. So it's interesting. It's interesting. So yeah, Chomsky was gonna be there. He probably still is. I'm assuming. But there's a lot of CEOs and co-founders, head of product. Let me scroll down here. Oh, there's even more. Senior Vice President, Amazon, the co-founder of Jeeves. Do you guys remember Jeeves? And then CEO of OnlyFans. Like, this is actually, when you guys know, like, we used to do these conferences and stuff in higher ed. One of the things about these conferences is not just about getting your message out, but it's also an opportunity for you to network, for you to meet different people and for them to connect with you. And this is how you grow, is by networking. So when you prevent people from attending these types of events, that's going to have over 70,000 attendees. That's not good. That's not good. So there's the curator, Ted, president of ACLU, lots of people, lots of speakers that are going to be there. Frank, did you say Frank said, what about me? I don't know, Frank. Are you coming to this event? But yeah, this is the event. And I feel like it's embarrassing. I really do feel like it's, how can they put out that statement that we call for rigorous debate? Really? That's why you're telling people they can't come. We decided to listen to our audience and we decided to uninvite them. So because your audience disagrees with their work and what they have to say, you just pull the plug just like that? The censorship, it's a problem. The censorship is a big problem. And that's why I tell you guys, I'll continue to talk about it because it's one thing after another. 1 minute it's YouTube. The next minute it's, Facebook. Next thing you know, people are getting pulled from PayPal. People are getting pulled from conferences. Terrible, terrible, terrible. I'll take those comments on Rockfin, Corey. Thanks so much. Okay. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. The number of ballot initiative states went from 24 to 23 because of Mississippi distribution requirement. Oh, okay. I forgot about that one. A distribution requirement is a statutory or constitutional mandate requiring that petitions for a ballot measure or candidate must be signed by voters from different political subdivisions in order for the ballot measure or a candidate to qualify on the ballot. In 1992, a Mississippi constitutional amendment said that in order for an initiative to get on the ballot, signatures must be gathered from all 5 congressional districts. Now, since the 2020 census, there has been an internal migration throughout the U.S. with people moving from one state to another. People moved out of Mississippi and therefore they lost a congressional district. Yikes. Due to that and a court case, the judge said that the BI process has now become suspended until the legislature puts forth an amendment before the citizens to ratify to either get rid of the distribution requirement, which would be best option, or keep it and change the distribution requirement from 5 to 4, or just say this is the percentage you must get for each congressional district, regardless of how many we have. The particular measure, SAB, is called a legislative referred constitutional amendment, meaning it was initiated by the state, not the citizen, and must receive majority approval in 2 successive joint legislative sessions to be placed on the ballot. Being placed on the ballot is the second to last process. Once voters vote to ratify it in your state, constitution or pass as a state law, the measure is then passed, and in this becomes an amendment. Governors, by the way, are not involved in the BI process in any state. Now, when it comes to citizen-initiated ballot initiatives started by citizens, specifically for the ones who will be covering later, which is BIs to pass Massachusetts laws. Massachusetts is an indirect ballot initiative state, meaning statutes, laws, and amendments proposed by the citizens. Initiative petitions do not go immediately on the ballot once qualifying, but instead go to the legislature to either adopt, to pass, or reject. If they choose to adopt, then it must be approved by 1/4 of the Massachusetts legislature in 2 successive joint sessions, 1 term to reach the ballot. No secondary batch of signatures is required. If they choose not to adopt, then proponents must collect another smaller round of signatures to place the statute on the ballot. Thank you so much for those, that on Rockfin and those tips. Thank you so much, Roger. Yeah. Check out, there's a ballot initiative panel on it should be on my homepage under panels. And it should be like the 3rd or 4th video there. It kind of stands out. It's like bright yellow, black and bright yellow. And we went through that. We went through like a whole panel breaking down ballot initiatives. And there were different people on the panel from different BI states. So definitely check that out, you guys, if you haven't seen that. That was done a while back. Okay, we are going to get into the story here with the Fetterman and Oz debate, and this is going to lead us into the call-in topic tonight. Because what was really interesting to me were the number of people who continued to say, well, I think Fetterman did a good job, without mentioning the problems with Fetterman as a candidate, the problems with Fetterman as someone supposedly running the Democratic Party, and the problem with Fetterman, whereas some left media have called him progressive, even though in multiple interviews he said that he is not a progressive. There were key things about John Fetterman as a candidate that I feel a lot of people were ignoring or just did not do their research and didn't understand. I'm going to tell you, and I said this on Twitter, those of us at RBN, we tried to warn people about John Fetterman months ago. But I want to start with this video here from Democracy Now! Now, there are two parts in the debate that she is going to discuss. And I noticed something about this video. I noticed that she did not mention the flaws that John Fetterman had policy-wise in this debate. Watch this. Let me go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. Boop-a-da-boop.
Dr. Oz talking about his support for the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
There should not be involvement from the federal government in how states decide their abortion decisions. As a physician, I've been in the room when there's some difficult conversations happening. I don't want the
Maybe we could do volume booster real quick, Corey.
Centered on the issue of reproductive rights. This is Dr. Oz talking about his support for the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
There should not be involvement from the federal government in how states decide their abortion decisions. As a physician, I've been in the room when there's some difficult conversations happening. I don't want the federal government involved with that at all. I want women, doctors, local political leaders, letting the democracy that's always allowed our nation to thrive, to put the best ideas forward so states can decide for themselves.
Meanwhile,
I just wanted to jump in really quick here because I just thought about something when he said, as a physician. A friend of mine was asking me recently, they were like, oh, shoot, you mean Dr. Oz is actually a real doctor? And I'm like, yeah, like, yeah, he was like a real doctor. And she was like, oh, I thought he just played one on TV. I said, you're so silly. You were so silly.
While John Fetterman reiterated his support for reproductive rights.
What I support on Roe v. Wade. That was the law of the land for 50 years. He celebrated when it fell down, and I would fight to reestablish on Roe v. Wade. That's what I run on. That's what I believe, and I've always believed that the choice belongs women and their doctors, and he believes that the choice should be with him or Republican legislators all across this nation.
For more, we're joined in Philadelphia by Will Bunch, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, national columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Will, welcome back to Democracy Now! So let's start off.
I just want to interject here and just say something. Again, notice the parts that they chose to discuss. We already know that the Republican candidate is not going to be for federal control of abortion. We already know that the Democratic candidate is going to be in for control or federal control of abortion. We already know those things. So what was interesting to me is that Amy took this opportunity to tell you something that you already know, instead of revealing things, key moments from that debate that a lot of people, apparently it was brought to my attention, were not aware of until that debate happened. I knew it. All of us over at RBN knew it. We talked about it. We covered it months ago. And it was very clear to me just a couple days ago that some people did not know these things about John Fetterman. So that has to tell you who's controlling the narrative. But that was what she chose to talk about, something you already know. Now, there's one more piece that she chose to focus on. I'm going to just shoot forward. This guy says stuff you already know. Democracy Now! Used to be so much better. So much better. And then there's this piece here that she chose to focus on.
Over President Biden's plan to offer student debt relief to millions of borrowers. This is Dr. Oz.
John Fetterman's approach, however, is not to deal with the unnecessarily high costs, but just to pay it. So if you want to pay students who didn't pay their loans back, basically what John Fetterman and Joe Biden are arguing for is for plumbers who didn't go to college and couldn't, for a bunch of reasons, afford it to pay the bills of lawyers who went to graduate school and haven't paid their debt back. I don't think that's right for the American people.
Let me just ask specifically, with the plan to ease student loan debt, the debt forgiveness of $10,000, $20,000 for Pell Grant recipients, do you support that position?
I do absolutely support that. I believe, like I said, it's about helping young learners, be able to get a better start, getting off in the start of their life. And I do believe that. And I believe a majority of Americans support that as well, too.
That last.
Okay. Didn't you already know that? Didn't you already know that Dr. Oz wasn't in favor of canceling student loan debt and Fetterman was in favor? Well, the question that they asked was in favor of the 10,000 to the 20,000 K, which doesn't go far and doesn't go far enough. But there was nothing revealed here that you didn't already know. And that's just based on party affiliation. This is where Democracy Now! Is at now. Now, at the very beginning of this video, watch what she does here. This is too much for me. Here we go.
Faced off Tuesday night in their first and only debate ahead of the November 8th election to fill the seat held by Republican Senator Pat Toomey, who's retiring at the end of the term. The Pennsylvania race will likely help decide which party controls the Senate. Fetterman's the lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania, who's running as a progressive populist. Oz is a well-known television doctor who's worth at least $76 million. He's been endorsed by Donald Trump. Much of the race has been focused on Fetterman's health. Just days before the Democratic primary in May, Fetterman suffered a stroke, forcing him to cancel public appearances for months. He still suffers from auditory processing issues. On Tuesday night, a closed captioning system was set up so Fetterman could read the questions and his opponent's responses. During his opening statement, Fetterman discussed his stroke.
And that was what a lot of people chose to focus on instead of what they should have been focusing on. Because here's the thing. John Fetterman did have a stroke, but John Fetterman had those policies before he had the stroke, and he still had those policies after he had a stroke. And what I saw is a lot of people, they wanted to focus on his condition instead of focusing on his cringe ass policies. Now let's go ahead, because I want to show you what Democracy Now! Left out. Now, if you saw me months ago, I had already discussed this, but here's your chance to hear about it from Fetterman himself on the debate stage. Now, this is the moment where Dr. Oz points out, obviously, about John Fetterman chasing down a black jogger with a gun. He was not a criminal, just a black jogger minding his own damn business. And John Fetterman chased him down with a gun and apparently pointed the gun at his chest. Now, I knew that, and I covered that a couple of months ago. But I want you to pay close attention to the way that Fetterman responds and the way that he reacts to this during the debate.
Stage has broken the law, we believe. John Fetterman took a shotgun, chased an unarmed African-American man, and put the gun, apparently, according to that man, to his chest. John, you weren't pulled over by the police. They let you go. You were the mayor at the time. Why haven't you apologized to that unarmed, innocent black man who you put a shotgun to his chest?
All right. We will allow a 30-second response to that, Mr. Fetterman, specifically what he was saying, referring to the incident in Braddock.
No, I made the opportunity to defend our community as the chief law enforcement officer there. Everybody in Braddock, an overwhelming majority community of black community, all understood what happened. They understood what happened, and everybody agreed that, and nobody believes that it was anything about me making a split-second decision to defend our community as well.
Why not apologize?
Mr. Oz, please. We are still with Mr. Fetterman. Turning to you.
Stage has broken the law, we believe. John Fetterman.
By the way, that's not the first time he's been asked to apologize for that. And before he said he won't. JB was right. I was going to mention this as well. This reminds me of the Ahmaud Arbery situation. So I covered that trial pretty extensively. Let me tell you the similarities here. With the Ahmaud Arbery situation, you had a black jogger jogging through the neighborhood. You had two white men chase him down in their truck with a gun, and they killed him. At the time, there had been reports of a suspicious black man peeking into people's homes, breaking in or whatever. So their first thought, they saw Ahmaud Arbery like, oh, he's trouble. He's part of the problem. They took the law into their own hands and they killed Ahmaud Arbery. John Fetterman chased down a black jogger, put a shotgun to his chest. This situation could have gone very differently. You see what I'm saying? That jogger got lucky. And he won't even apologize for it. And this is the guy that a lot of like white leftists on Twitter and some of them on YouTube are telling you, yeah, that happened. That sucks, but you should still vote for him. They're willing to throw black people under the bus. Let's forget his racist tendencies and still vote for him. He also came out and said that he was anti-BDS. He was against BDS. You guys, if you watch us over at RBN, you know how we feel about the Palestinian movement. So he also couldn't have that same type of empathy for the Palestinian people. Dude's got some issues, but this is the person they tell you you should still vote for him anyway. So this is something we need to talk about. We need to talk about some of the white professional managerial class that are willing to sell black people down the river and working class people down the river just so you can vote for someone who runs in the Democratic Party that they believe is going to be your best shot. Just to keep the party dream alive. There's a third party candidate running in this race, Richard Weiss. Did you guys know that? It's not just John Fetterman and Dr. Oz. It's too bad they didn't let Richard Weiss debate. I wish he would have been given that opportunity. Because unlike John Fetterman, Richard Weiss supports Medicare for all, obviously. But Richard Weiss does not support this particular issue that John Fetterman does, obviously, because Richard Weiss is a part of the Green Party. Now, John Fetterman, I tried to tell people about this as well, that he was flip-flocking on fracking. He was a flip fracker. He was going back and forth. And I told you that people had video evidence. For those who don't know, John Fetterman had an interview with Savage Joy 4 years ago, about his position on fracking. That video is still posted. That video's not gone. But for the people who are climate activists and for the leftists who tell you that they care really deeply about climate change, they still want to tell you vote for John Fetterman because he's the best we got. They want you to vote for the guy who agrees with fracking. They really care about the climate that much. Listen to this. This is terrible. And by the way, this is CNN calling this out.
Now, Fetterman is, of course, recovering from a stroke and has done much of his campaigning via Twitter. So appearing in the debate was a risky and gutsy move for Fetterman, who could appear halting at times last night. But those stylistic issues have nothing to do with the substance of one flip-flopping statement he made.
I've always supported fracking, and I always believe that independence with our energy is critical.
Now, it's fine for Fetterman to change his mind, but it is false to say that he has always supported fracking, as a moderator pointed out. Because as recently as 2018, Fetterman was saying the opposite, as first unearthed by CNN's K-File.
I don't support fracking at all, and I never have.
Now, Fetterman.
Now, that is the interview with Savage Joy. Let me see if I can just get back to that. I don't know what happened. Oh, did it go too far? Let me try it again.
Now, Fetterman is, of course, recovering from a stroke and has done much of his campaigning via Twitter. So appearing in the debate was a risky and gutsy move for Fetterman, who could appear halting at times last night. But those stylistic issues have nothing to do with the substance of one flip-flopping statement he made.
I've always supported fracking, and I always believe that independence with our energy is critical.
He's always supported fracking, and Jenna is saying the same thing, and she's in Pennsylvania. So, and by the way, that's not the first time he's admitted that on the debate stage. He also admitted that on the debate stage before he had a stroke. Do you see the problem? This information was out there, guys. People just didn't want to talk about it. People weren't doing their research on John Fetterman. They saw a guy with a hoodie and shorts and like, oh, that guy's badass. Oh, he's cool. Totally looked over the fact that he was endorsed by Hillary Clinton. That should have been a big red flag. Totally ignored the fact about the jogger. Totally ignored the fact that he was anti-BDS. And totally ignored the fact that this guy was pro-fracking. That is not a progressive. This is how weak the progressive movement has become. They're willing to accept anybody now that's running through the Democratic Party that claims to be for the working people. They don't even have to meet all the requirements anymore. They want you to vote for a pro-fracker. Now we're going to get into the segment here where it talks about the interview where he was with Savage Joy, where he said he did not support fracking.
Now, it's fine for Fetterman to change his mind, but it is false to say that he has always supported fracking, as a moderator pointed out. Because as recently as 2018, Fetterman was saying the opposite, as first unearthed by CNN's K-File.
I don't support fracking.
Okay, I paused it right there. That's Savage Joy. And that's Fetterman. Do you see what? He's saying whatever he thinks is going to help him win. Why else would Hillary Clinton endorse him? Think about it. Now, here's the problem. And I want to share this as well. You know, the vote blue no matter who peeps. And that includes, and I hate to say it, but that includes Marianne Williamson, who has been on this show multiple times. There are some good positions that she has, and there are some cringe ass positions that she has. And I had to call her out on it. So Marianne Williamson, let me show you what she said. So let's go up here. She said, I'd rather have my senator be a principled man who sometimes has trouble getting his words out than someone who can get his words out but sacrificed his principles along the way. Everything I just told you about John Fetterman in reference, these are policy stances. I haven't attacked him on a personal level. This is just policy. What about that is principled? So at first I wasn't going to say anything. And I was like, no, I'm going to say something. So I did. So I replied to Marianne and I said, so you're okay with the senator who is pro-fracking and chased down a black jogger with a gun? This is why, and you know, we were asked this question before, like those of us at RBN, some people think that Marianne would be a good candidate to run and do like the dirty flip or whatever, where she would do the dirty break, actually, where she would run as a progressive Democrat and then do the dirty break and then run as like an independent or third party. She don't have it in her. This is the thing, she don't have it in her. But also, she makes some pretty cringe ass remarks on Twitter. This might be deleted at some point because she's done that before. But this is the problem with the vote blue, no matter who people, they just go for anything. Like, you're just supposed to accept whatever it is. There's no like, There's no principle anymore at all. That's what I'm saying. These progressives are weak. They don't really stand on anything anymore. Nick put it great. He said, it's just vibes. They're just running on vibes. They're not running on anything. What is John Fetterman running on? Oh, I'm going to help the working class people. How? What are you going to do for the environment? Where are you on climate change? Are you supporting Medicare for all? Where are you on that? It just, it's just vibes, bro. That's it. It's just vibes. And what's really interesting, and this is the question we have to ask ourselves, guys. Where do we go from here, right? We'll be talking about this tonight. We need to talk about the progressives that have pretty much they're just freaking libs. That's all they are now. And I want to show you an example. Here we have Bernie Sanders, the sheep herder himself. Now he's tweeting, this election is not just about you. It's about our kids and grandkids and the kind of country we have become. We cannot fail them. I'll be out on the road doing everything I can to help win this thing in the next 2 weeks. I hope you'll do the same. Now, here's Bernie Sanders announcing that he's going on the road. And here's all the cities, all the states where he's going to be on the road to help the Democratic Party win in the midterms. Now, somebody explain something to me. Bernie Sanders is willing to travel across the country to help the Democratic Party win, a party that he's not even a part of, a party that screwed him over 2 election cycles in a row, that did him dirty. He's willing to go on the road and help these Democrat candidates win, but he couldn't show up to one Medicare for All march. Medicare for All marches were over 50 cities in this country last year. He couldn't go to one march, but he can go around this country to help the Democratic Party try to win in the midterm. And he's not even supporting some of these candidates are not progressive. Let's be real. Look at who's on this list. Rally with Karen Bass. Karen Bass is corporate. And see, this is where the Working Families Party come in, because these candidates, they get endorsed by the Working Families Party. And so people think, oh, they're for the working class. You can say you're for the working class and be for the working class and still be corporate. Do you see the problem? Bernie Sanders out here supporting Karen Bass. This is why the progressive movement is dead. Because at the end of the day, they all sold out. And some people, I feel like people should have noticed that right after Force the Vote. Right after Force the Vote. Some people did. Some people, they just now waking up. And some of them, they still kind of holding on hope because they have nothing else left. That's all they got. This is terrible. On the road. Let me ask you a question. Would any of those Democrat politicians have gone on the road to help Bernie Sanders win? Elizabeth Warren wasn't even willing to drop out before Super Tuesday to help Bernie win when she even knew she had no chance of winning. That's the snake. Hillary Clinton still smears Bernie Sanders till this day because she still blames her loss on him and Russia. That's the witch. You tell me who would have helped him. Barack Obama made phone calls and told people to drop out to help Joe Biden. Barack Obama called Bernie Sanders and said, you need to let this one go over to Joe, Bernie. And Bernie did it. Barack Obama. That's the navigator. When it was time for Bernie to win or need help, none of those Democrat politicians gave Bernie Sanders the time of day. Now you 80 something years old and you about to go on the road to go kiss people's ass. So hopefully Dems will win in the midterms. But they did everything they could to make sure that you lost. That's why the movement is dead. So we're going to talk about that tonight on Call In. I want to go ahead and show the discussion topic here. I'll have to add the link to the chat. But this is what we're talking about tonight. Episode 50. I can't believe we're on our 50th episode already. This is crazy. Fetterman debate and Dem exit after the debate between Senate candidates Fetterman and Oz. It is clear that both candidates are not the best option. But what will it take for progressives to leave the Democratic Party? So you guys, I'd love to hear from your voices tonight. I'm gonna go to some of the comments, do that little thing. Sean Brown says, yep, that shit is just sad. It's crazy, right? It's crazy. Abuse. Bernie got paid. That's what that's about. James, honest open debate is badly needed right now. I agree. Saul, gray zone is a thorn in the mainstream media propagandist side. Yeah, I know, right? If people didn't know about gray zone, they probably do now. Angela, I learn more from people I disagree with. They don't necessarily change my mind, but I learn a lot more about the other side of an issue, which makes me in turn learn more about my side. Deanna, Nick had a great rap with Glenn Greenwald today. Yes, guys, check that out. Nick interviewed Glenn Greenwald earlier today on RBN. Check that out. Thank you for the super chat, Kent Lee. Love your work and good info. Thank you. And I love that picture of the koala bear there. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Massachusetts ballot initiative process by far, Sab, is the most complex. Yeah, tell me about it. Red state process is far simpler. You heard that, JB? If you want to do an episode about Florida ballot initiatives, it's easier where you are. Jenna, thank you so much, Sabby Sabs and RBN, y'all. I've been screaming this shit. It's so great having others see it too. So appreciate it. Captain Obvious, Bernie got paid and we got played. That's a good way of saying it. Very good way there. Are we good on, let me know if we have anything on Rockfin, Corey. If not, should be good to get. Okay, cool. Awesome. Oh my God, I'm going to start calling on time. What? Okay, let me go ahead and put the link in the chat here. Oh, that's not the right link. I have to do it on here. Hit that like button if you haven't had a chance to do so yet, guys. We're going to move on over to Call In and have this discussion and talk about it. And I want to hear what you guys have to say. Want to hear what you guys have to say. So yeah, where do we go from here, ladies and gentlemen? I don't know. All right, let me grab my link. I can't believe I'm starting Call In on time, guys. Like, this is new for me. All right. Tootsie Roll. Tootsie Roll. That Tootsie Roll. To the left, to the left, to the right, to the right, to the front, to the front. Slide, 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 slide. To the left. Okay, it should be pinned now at the top of the chat there. So you guys should be able to see that call-in link now. So I am going to go ahead and hit. Terry knows it. Terry said Tootsie Roll. That Tootsie Roll. Tootsie Roll. I don't know. Some of you might be too young in the chat to know that song, but yeah. Slide. That was like back when we had there were more songs that gave you instructions for a dance. They just told you what to do. You didn't have to think about it. They just told you slide, go to the left, go to the right, and that was all cool. Okay. All right, guys, we're going to head on over to Call In. I'll be back tomorrow night. Diane Sayre will be here tomorrow. She is running as an independent in New York. She's been getting a lot of news lately, and we'll also do news stories. So join me again tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, we're going to head over to call in. You guys know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.